allowing me to interview you. I went through your work and I'm really impressed. I actually a bit inspired as well because one thing we have in common is we love to write. But
Mhm.
the thing with you is that aside from writing, which I envy you because you have two novels, am I right? Two or more than novels.
Yes,
You
yes.
made that shift to music.
Hmm.
It's kind of rare for me. Although you can do that, but the first thing I want to ask you maybe is what made you do that? I mean, or was it something you had really had planned?
Well, to be honest, I was always doing music from a really young age, like as young as 7, really. I was trained classically on piano. We actually moved into this house in New Jersey with this big yellow piano in the basement. So my parents were just like, "All right, let's send her to piano lessons," and they did. So I got a really basic music training from the start. I started singing really young too. When I went to like the Rutgers Children's Choir out in Jersey too.
Mhm.
So music was always very, very much a part of my life. Writing though too, I was writing poems when I was a young kid too, and all sorts of stuff like that. I always loved reading, so literature and songwriting always kind of went together for me naturally. My father too is a poet, an English teacher, high school English teacher, and always my mother too is a music appreciator. So music and dancing and good Italian and Puerto Rican food were always very prevalent in our home. So yeah, I mean, the two always kind of, there was never really a big shift, I guess is my point, because it was always kind of there, but there was definitely a focus shift. And the focus back to music really happened about 5 or 6 years ago. It's just this, I had to. I mean, it was just a personal kind of compulsion, and just it's kind of like there was truly nothing else to do at that point. So um, it all kind of came together again. So yeah, I mean, I don't really say that I changed, so to speak, because it's always kind of been there, but and
Is
it
there
keeps coming, the songwriting, and I don't know, I may be writing something else soon. I may be doing a short film soon. We'll see. So there's a lot that I like to keep open.
was there anything that influenced you? I mean, any artist, any person, any genre that made you make that move?
I think when I moved to Oakland, and this was I was living in Oakland up until about 3 years ago, and at some point it's just I always grew up with a lot of classic salsa music. My mother, was always exposed me to all the classics, um, so it was very much always there. But as a kid, it's like it's always mom's music, right? So I never. It was interesting. There was a shift where something I can't really quite place what it was, but it pulled me back into that world, and something clicked and something really stirred something in my soul, and I became very much addicted. It was just constant salsa. Hector Lavoe, Willie Colon. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Tito Puente, of course, I grew up with too. So La India, like the voice, her power. I grew up with a lot of smooth jazz, like Tony Braxton too, Sade. So the combination was very interesting, right? Of like jazz standards, of course, too. Dinah Washington, Ella Fitzgerald. I mean, so yeah, it's interesting how that kind of brought me back, and then just the writing kind of happened at the same point, and it was really a beautiful, just passionate, natural, necessary experience. A growth experience. Opening up to myself and the world, and a way that actually matters to me, makes me feel good and inspired. So that's kind of where I go with that.
They're deeply narrative driven.
Uh
The
huh.
your work. So do you being a writer? I mean, do you approach this like storytelling?
Absolutely. I think that part of songwriting, kind of like writing books and short stories and poems and things of that nature, it is a narrative. I think it's a narrative that artists are often speaking to themselves, in whatever way works for them, hopefully creative, hopefully engaging to somebody else who'd be watching or listening. But it's about that kind of connection, right? Like that narrative between yourself and the narrative with the world, and whatever it is, is fueling you or on your mind. Or so absolutely, I think storytelling, and again, it's always been natural to, how I've worked, how I've just expressed myself, really from a really young age. So, but it wasn't until recently that I kind of like got that confidence to just do my own thing without having to be too concerned about, oh, I'm too different, or I'm not like this person, or I'm not like that, and I don't fit here. I mean, there was definitely that struggle. well, in lots of different regards, but definitely with songwriting, right? Because it's either Latin or it's everything else, right? So the blending of the two worlds for me, not only is a personal experience being of both, worlds, but the, music, absolutely. I mean, I'm all over the map from Hector Lavoe to like, the Stone Temple Pilots. Like there's a lot of, diversity in my taste. So absolutely. Storytelling, yeah, that's part of the story too. So.
Right? Because of what you're doing, there are people who call you a visionary artist.
Oh, that's nice. Thank you.
What does this mean to you? I mean, does this make you encourage you or entice you to push boundaries, do better?
Absolutely. Visionary is a really interesting word because I think it can really encompass, lots of different ways of seeing the world, right? Whether it's actually visual, whether it's something emotive, whether it's something spiritual, whether all these things, right? So to hear that is very humbling and inspiring, and I'm grateful because I think that's the best way an artist can really hope for is to communicate that vision. So yeah, I do. I have very visceral, real, interesting, unique experiences. From the spiritual world to creative. I mean, things do kind of come together in really unique ways. I have a lot of lucid dreams, things like that. So it's a very visceral, visionary experience to begin with. So yeah, to hear that is really nice to hear because that means I'm communicating something that I'm authentically experiencing myself. So it's the best I can hope for at this point. So thank you.
Okay, you write, you compose, and you perform. Which of those three for you is the most fulfilling?
Well, to be honest, the performance aspect, this project is relatively new as far as it actually coming together since I've moved here in Tucson. Um, so, the performance as I can't really speak for that just yet because it is in a very nascent form. I'm kind of getting all the singles out there right now so that, there's a good repertoire to refer to at home. But so can't really speak about the performance. What was the other one? Compose and
Perform. Right. Right.
compose. So
Compose.
yeah, right now it's mainly the creative composing, producing, getting music videos made. So I think they're all important. I kind of perform naturally a lot in what I do, like whether it's dancing in my living room or just, it's I do it without necessarily intending to do it a lot. So I'm really interested to see what happens when I do get on stage with all of this kind of, put together. Because yeah, it's been a long time in the making now, well, relatively long, but so there's a lot to see what happens and experience with that. So absolutely, composing though is where my focus has been for the past 5 years. So with all this, so I've got about 3 albums that I'm in the process of producing.
Mhm.
So there's a lot more to come.
Yeah, I bet. Okay. So having done this, I mean, I gotta ask you, what do you hope that your audience would take away from your music and stories? Because in each one, I noticed that there's a certain message you're trying to send across. So what do you want the listeners to take away from your music and stories?
Um, Really, whatever speaks to them, because they are all pretty different, and I think they'll, continue to be so as I keep releasing music. Um, so that said, there's kind of a mood for every song for every mood. So, and music's so interesting in that way because you could have somebody like Kate Bush, for instance,
Mhm.
go viral, as of like 5 years ago because of Stranger Things, and suddenly people who had never heard Kate Bush before are hearing her. So it's really interesting to see how that can evolve over time. So yeah, you never really know what people are going to connect with, or what song they're going to connect, even when. As as Kate Bush is a great example. So really, whatever speaks to them.
Yeah. Being successful, being one of the being a success in what you're doing. What's the best advice you can give to other artists who are trying to create their own paths?
Be patient. Be
Okay.
patient and be open to things working out in different and unexpected ways that actually drive some creative force that you didn't anticipate. There is a certain mystery about the whole creative process, of course, and kind of works in tandem with all aspects of life, I think. But the more that you can be open with not necessarily setting your standard in a particular place, and whatever that is, right? Whether it's a style of music or a time period in your life, or just a creative inspiration, like, keep it open, because the more patient you can be through the whole process, not only like, you know it helps you stay sane, with all of it, because you have to deal with rejection, especially if you're doing something new and different. Expect a lot of pushback. People are not necessarily going to be open to something new if they haven't heard it before. So you kind of have to find your way of pushing through that, having your own kind of grounding, meditative, creative, magic and process that, becomes kind of a ritual, because you know kind of what to expect after the first few times you're releasing things. And especially if you're doing something different, you can always expect somebody to say, this is crazy, this is weird, what are you doing, like, where's the real music, whatever it is. So you have to kind of, and it's different for everybody, everybody's got a different kind of process of handling that. But just keeping it open, because that's also fuel, right, to like, that builds the confidence, that builds like the skin you need really to like push through whatever negativity you may be hearing, and still create something that's your own first and foremost, but that will definitely be interesting to somebody else because it came from you, not somebody else necessarily doing it for you. It's authentic, in other words. So you got to find that kind of sweet spot, but be patient and keep, I mean, it sounds cliche, but you just got to keep going and stay open, I guess. The best advice I can offer at this time.
I guess that's the holds the same, that holds the same with other things that anyone is doing right now, not just music, right?
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
Okay, okay. So I wanna talk to you about your latest single, the one that Logan sent to me, "Where I Died." Okay,
Hmm.
okay. It's very very interesting the title, so I had to watch it. So it delves into the themes of personal trauma and transformation. What was the inspiration behind this track? I mean, how were you have your experience? Did you experience anything that influenced its creation?
Absolutely. Um, Well, I think the most basic response I can give to that is, even just recently, and of course, through everybody's life, you kind of experience these cycles of course, real death of loved ones. My brother passed away a couple of years ago, tragically. So there's the physical death, of that. Then there are the more inner, spiritual deaths that we all go through many times in a lifetime, like at different times too, based on all sorts of stuff, trauma being one of them, of course, whether it's sexual assault or,
Yeah.
abuse, the list goes on and on of the ways that people experience these things. But I think it's really just a combination of all of that, these cycles of like death and rebirth, and kind of, what to make of it. And, at the very least, how to express it and feel it, and then have the courage to really like just completely push through it, and just really come out as something not just a lot stronger, but a lot more creative, a lot more confident, of course, wiser in whatever experience it was. And yeah, all that stuff can take time to really like settle, of course. And I think that's different for everybody. Especially, I think the younger you are, when you experience like, very traumatizing events, it could be a little bit harder and longer to kind of unpack all of that, so yeah, I think it's, and I think that especially now, this song actually, if it was up to me, it would have come out like 2 years ago. But it's actually better that it didn't, because I think there has been so much that has happened, not just in my own personal experience, but for everybody. I mean, for the past 5 years have been very intense, especially in these cycles of that life, death. What do I make of all this? How do I get through it? Am I the only one, right? Like, am I crazy? Like all these things that people suffer through these cycles, and maybe feel like they don't have somebody to relate, or so I hope at the very least this song can kind of like peel that back a little bit, and a little breath of fresh air, maybe like a rhythm to kind of get the spirit moving, through it. And yeah, and I hope it helps in some. I hope it's a cathartic experience on multiple levels. So between the video and the song, I think they both kind of cover, at least for me, the most important aspects, especially as a woman, and going through lots of different ways of how we understand trauma, but in tandem with how we understand ourselves. So, you know, I hope it helps everybody. But yeah,
Well,
definitely anybody who's experienced any kind of trauma, I hope it helps.
anyone who goes through trauma is gonna have a difficult time. I mean, getting your mind back together. I mean, and like, on your end, you were able to create a song out of it. I mean, writing is, well, it's hard enough. by creating a song and trying to transform it into something helpful, therapeutic. I mean, was it difficult on your end to do that? And did it have any impact on you?
Absolutely. I think the best part about releasing music is releasing music, right? First, the first creative process of actually getting something, melody and lyrics, like, I think that's probably the best feeling, to be honest, is when a song is like created, and you could really like, and it may not be perfect to start, may have some missing pieces, but kind of that moment where I just created this song and I love it and I don't really understand it. It's maybe not totally done, but that release, right? So there's that release, and then of course there's the public release, which, I mean, personally, it's yes, it's very. I haven't been through it enough times to, say definitively what the consistency is, but um, it's also powerful, but not quite in the same like creative sense because I think there's a little bit more anxiety, coupled with now I have to release it to everybody else. So it's not just me in my little studio, you know, having a great time. It's like now I have to, and of course with that comes all of the questions of judgment and, so on and so forth. But absolutely, there's different ways. And then once you start performing, then there's another release, right? There's like that live stage release, which could be a very different experience. So I'm really excited to see how all of those things kind of continue to evolve. But yeah, the creative release is probably my favorite.
Okay, how challenging was it to make to do Where I Died compared to your other songs? Was there any difference, or was it harder, or was it easier?
I have to say that the process of actually recording it was pretty straightforward, and actually, it was the first time I recorded a song here in Tucson.
Mm-hmm.
Up until a year before that, the producer I was working with, Sergio Mendoza, we were working remote. I was still in Oakland at the time. He was here. So Bull is totally remote. Where I Died was I actually came here for 3 days, and we recorded it in two, mixed it on the third. And yeah, I mean, it was magical. It was very, first of all, it was my first time in Tucson ever. I ended up moving here a year later because the experience was so great and the community, everything. I mean, Latin music is very much thriving here and culture. And so there was a lot that just organically came together. And he's obviously an excellent musician and producer. So we already had an understanding on that level. But being here physically probably made it a lot easier because there weren't that many revisions because I was actually physically there, right? So, and it just came together really just naturally, where there wasn't much, question. It just, it was one of those moments. So that's kind of when you have something extra special too. When you don't have to force too much, you don't have to think about everything too much. So, yeah, I'd say Where I Died actually, on the production side of things and actually recording came out the easiest so far.
Okay, you said more projects moving forward.
Absolutely, yes.
Are there any more bigger projects, things you're gonna do moving forward?
Yeah, so I mentioned I have about 3 albums that I'm in the
Mhm.
process of producing and getting put together. Right now I'm focused on releasing singles just because it's easier, it's less expensive, right? And it's a good way to kind of, you know, um, be a little bit more liberated with who I can work with as well, right? Not necessarily getting locked down into an album at this moment. So yeah, at this point it's kind of like I just need to choose which song it's going to be because it's interesting how I'm sure you've heard a lot of artists talk about songs having their own time, and the song may be done, but the world's not ready for it, or there's something else that needs to come into the fray. And so it's going to be interesting to see once I decide. But I do have one in particular that so far um, seems like it's going to be the next one. So definitely, definitely got plenty of other things going on. So
Okay,
just have to choose.
yeah, my last question for you, Claudette. I think I read it from your site. You practice karate, or you did karate?
Karate, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
okay. Did this help? I do martial arts too, and
Oh, do
sometimes it
you?
helps eases. I do taekwondo.
Okay,
Okay,
cool.
so whatever, regardless, whatever martial arts that
Hmm.
includes focus, concentration, and calmness. Did this help you?
Absolutely. I get the chills actually when people ask me about this because it just that kind of birth of that part of me, the karateka side, right? Um, helped me through so much, like just speaking of trauma, like that absolutely helped me to like, in a just very natural way, kind of focus energy in a more, healing, productive, focused way that's less reactive and more, I guess not meditative, but again, focused, right? And the discipline that comes with that, and just showing up on the dojo floor every day, even when you can't throw a punch that great, or my roundhouse kick sucks, or my back kick doesn't even hit anything. I mean, the first few years were very, daunting on my patience with myself, because I do like to, I could be a perfectionist at times. And, I think like everybody, you always want to be good when you start, but that of course is not the reality for anything, especially martial arts, where it's a whole like mind, body, spirit balance that you have to achieve for what you're doing. So absolutely helped me channel my anger, which was part of the trauma. It also helped me to, open up more creative doors, do things differently. I had lived in Kyoto, Japan for teaching English actually for about a year. So, a lot of just the beauty of the culture and the serenity of it was always very familiar to me. So again, one of these more natural progressions that happened. And then I reached a point where I'm like, all right, I gotta do some kind of martial art and like punch shit and like all this stuff. And yeah, and I have to say it actually, like some people get confused and they think, oh, well, if you do martial arts, that means you're probably more violent or more aggressive, right? And absolutely not. It's the opposite.
Yes.
It disciplines you so that you don't get violent. And statistically, yeah, people who are trained in martial arts are less likely to get into fights after, of course, they've been training typically. So, I think it's been absolutely creative, spiritual, and just personal more than anything else. Get in great shape too. So I hope, more women actually start getting involved in whatever martial arts. There's so many to choose from too, all over the world. So,
And
choose your fight.
it goes back to your advice earlier. Patience with martial arts helps you extend your patience. Am I right?
Right. Exactly. Absolutely. And, your patience with yourself, which is the biggest kind of, people always say it's your own worst enemy, right? And I absolutely agree with that. And I think that the more that people can get comfortable accepting that and learning from that and like challenging themselves in different ways, the easier things could be all around, so absolutely. Patience.
All right. Claudette, thank you, thank you. Thank you so much
Thank you,
for spending
Brian.
time. And I
Thank
hope I can get to see you or talk to you more when you're famous, more popular than who you are now.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much, Brian. It was a pleasure.
Okay, thank you.